The details are not the details. The details are the design.
Welcome to The Art of Quality, the podcast of stories from experienced practitioners seeking wisdom in business, entrepreneurship, investing, and the arts. We are your hosts, John, Paul, Will, and Ferdinand. Today we're joined by Mark Hellweg, who's the founder and CEO of Ratio Coffee, Clive Coffee, and Able Brewing. I'm excited to talk to Mark. He was one of the first people that I met who's in the consumer product space and deeply cares about bringing craft, quality, beauty to products that he puts into the world, in his case, coffee brewers. And he makes the brewer that makes my coffee every morning. It's a beautiful product to look at. It's a beautiful product to use. It gets to simplicity on the far side of complexity, which, coffee lovers will know. There's sort of an endless rabbit hole there. But Mark's doing something very special in the space, and I'm excited to speak with him about his journey and the products he's put into the world.
All right, recording and transcribing. Cool. All right. So, Mark, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to go deep on coffee and coffee products. So to get us going here, introduce yourself, give us your background, and then kind of lead us into, why coffee products, why the niches of the coffee world that you've chosen to occupy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and this is the first time I've been on a podcast. I'm have a little bit of trepidation, but it's an honor to be here and to talk about a quality that a topic that I like a lot and have thought about a lot over the years. So I'm Mark Hellweg. I'm here in Portland, Oregon with my wife. We have 4 kids ranging from 6 to 16. So we have little kid problems, which this past weekend was my 6-year-old decided to, as he described it, let an eraser fall into his nose. And that required a trip to Zoom Care to deal with that, up to a 16-year-old, and we're teaching her how to drive. She is very brutally honest about which parent is better at teaching someone how to drive, and it's not me, and that's okay. Yeah, so I've been in the coffee equipment industry since 2008. I cannot believe how long that is. Just shocking. But first, how I got into coffee was, my dad bought a Starbucks barista espresso machine when I was 13 or 14 or something like that. And that was my first taste of coffee. And then when I got my car, I remember loving the ritual of being in a cafe. And I would drive, we lived out maybe 30 minutes outside of Portland, out in the sticks. And I remember getting in my 1994 Honda Accord and driving from rural Oregon, more or less, into Portland to this Italian cafe called Torrefazione. And that was the place where they brought a sense of craft, I guess, to the beverage. So, they would texturize the milk, and they would pour Rosetta in this hand painted pottery, and then you'd sit on the patio. And so I was really into Hemingway at the time. So I'd bring a Hemingway book and get my cappuccino and my limonada, this very precious moment or whatever. And then fast forward a couple of years, and I got married in 2005. My wife and I lived right in inner Southeast Portland, and Stumptown, their number 2 store, was on Belmont. So I go to that store and get a cup of French press coffee. It was $1 back in the day.
Wow,
that's how old I am. And that's where I discovered the sort of the taste quality of coffee, the culinary aspect, the different senses of terroir and different types of coffee, and the different, this is a wash process, this is a natural process. And so started to, think about coffee and love coffee. And it was certainly a daily routine. And then in 2008, I had worked with my brother and my dad on an e-commerce business that was in the wakeboarding and snowboarding space. And this was early e-com, 2000, I think they started in 2003, and I joined in 2005, right when I got married. And it was early enthusiast e-commerce marketing, right? So they were a full price retailer selling high-end wakeboarding gear. they were growing rapidly. Really what was happening in hindsight was people were getting a home equity line of credit, buying a boat, buying all this wakeboarding gear, whatever. It was like totally like a unnatural explosion of this category, right? And then we went into the snowboarding space to balance out the seasonality of the wakeboarding business and whatever. And so we went from, when I joined the company, I think there were like 4 or 5 of us in my dad's basement. And then by the time, fast forward to 2007, thereabouts, we had, I think, 15 employees, and we bought an espresso machine for the office. And going back to my dad's Starbucks barista, we bumped up from a Starbucks barista machine into a Rancilio Sylvia. And it was my job to buy the machine. I was running operations at the time, operations and finance. So I was shopping for an espresso machine. I find the Rancilio Sylvia. And as I'm shopping, like, it kind of stuck in my head, like, wow, no one's doing a really good job with e-commerce storytelling like you see in the snowboarding and wakeboarding space. No, like, kind of a cluttered category. You see this wall of products, sort of undifferentiated stainless steel boxes. There was always a dark roasted coffee bean banner across the top and some big ugly font or whatever. And there wasn't good copywriting. There wasn't good, photo and video assets to sort of merchandise, what you're buying. And long story short, that business, the entire wakeboarding industry contracted massively in a very short period of time in 2007, 2008. And my dad was the investor in that business, and he got so tired of funding all of these losses and whatever else. So we ended up, that business was going to be sold off. And I worked with my brother to work on this idea I had, which was going back to shopping for an espresso machine, saying, I wonder if people would buy high quality coffee equipment online. It was just a theory. And I was actually preparing to go on unemployment because I was losing my job, and my wife and we had our first kid at the time. So I'm like terrified, and it seems like a really terrible time to start a business, 2008, right? But with his help, I took the website and essentially swapped out all the assets in the copy for wakeboarding stuff and put in coffee equipment stuff that I could easily drop ship or buy small quantities of or whatever. Borrowed $10,000 from my grandma and launched clivecoffee.com in September of 2008. And my first month of business, we had about $7,000 of revenue. And the second month, we had $75,000 revenue. And the reason for that is Cook's Illustrated magazine had reviewed coffee makers in the October issue, and they happened to pick out of a lineup of 10 coffee makers the same one that I had picked to offer on clivecoffee.com. And that was because I had, with my dad's help, surveyed the coffee equipment category and came to the conclusion there's really only one option. It's the Mocha Master, this Dutch company that's been making this design since 1964. The coffee maker controls the water temperature and the time of the brew cycle and all of that. So Cook's Illustrated, their conclusion after testing Mr. Coffee, and I can't even remember all the brands, but they basically said, if you're not going to get a Mocha Master, stick with a French press. And so that was like jet fuel for the business. And I ended up selling, I think, around $1 million in 2009. That's essentially one SKU.
Wow.
It was a fantastic business for a very short period of time. I had so much money from this 1 year of running the business with like one part-time employee that would come in to ship these coffee makers, that I took my wife and our then she was, I think, 3 or 4 at the time, took her to Costa Rica, ended up buying a micro lot of coffee from Terrazoo, started expanding the coffee selection that we had on our website. And then I promise this story hasn't ended. I'll get there. The wave that we were riding became apparent that it was a wave when the bigger retailers, of course, they read the Cook's Illustrated article, they see the opportunity. So with the Williams-Sonoma, the Crate and Barrel, like all these big retailers, they add Mocha Master, and then our sales just dropped dramatically. Like it was reminded me of the wave cresting in the wakeboarding space. So at Clive, we pushed into espresso machines, and we ended up negotiating a couple of deals to import exclusive label called Lucca. I came up with the name Lucca from a beautiful town near Pisa on the coast, Ligurian coast in Italy. So came up with the Lucca brand and started importing customized espresso machines for the American market. And so this is 2012 or so. And looking at the drip coffee maker space, there still was just kind of Mocha Master. And then Bonavita came out in 2012, I think. And that was another wave. We sold a whole lot of Bonavita, made a bunch of money. It was awesome. And then before you know it, Amazon's selling it at a discount or whatever it is. And that wave crests. So I'm realizing this great weakness in my business model of I have a point of view of what I will and will not sell. I'm not going to carry every brand. I'm not going to carry every product. So there's only so much that's coming out that fits the Clive offering. And it's only a matter of time before those products make their way into, of course, like they should, onto the other retailers. So this is a fatal flaw in the business model. And concurrently with this, my wife, I think we had our second or third child by this time. And, coffee, my coffee appreciation has matured a little bit. I've started to really love a well-made pour over cup of coffee. Kova is here in Portland. They're doing this really elaborate and theatrical, pour over process that they would hold 2 Japanese pouring kettles, one in each hand. And they kept setting it on this induction heater to keep the temperature very, very stable. And they would have a gram scale and a timer and this very, very optimized pour over process, right? The cup of coffee is very nuanced and very expressive of the coffee, just really, really nice, right? So I'm looking at the deficiencies in the business model. I'm looking at my own home coffee routine, and my wife and I have started to realize, okay, we actually need 20 ounces of coffee each in the morning. And there's nothing quite like the feeling of I feel like I need to have coffee before I can make coffee. And if you need 40 ounces of coffee that tastes good, reminds you of this hand brewed cup of coffee that you got at Kova or whatever. And you also want something in your kitchen that's beautiful that you don't want to hide in your pantry when you have guests over. There just wasn't anything on the market besides this heritage brand of Mocha Master. So that led me to create Ratio as a brand, and our first product, Ratio 8, we started working on this in 2012. We launched a pre-order campaign, our own sort of Kickstarter style campaign on our own website. And we ended up pre-selling, $620,000 worth of coffee makers or something like that, which is fantastic, right? But the problem is you then have to ship $620,000 worth of coffee makers that reflect the promise you made that this is going to be a lovely, well-made cup, coffee maker. The coffee is going to be wonderful, all these other things. And so that launched me on this, golly, now, here we are, 2023. This is 11 years later. This journey of discovery of coffee equipment and what quality means, and how do you, as you start to expand your audience and you start to sell to people who are used to a Keurig and you're getting them into a Ratio, and how do we grow this company well, and how do we have a manufacturing facility in Portland, Oregon with increasing costs and complexity, and then the pandemic and all this stuff. So it's this is sort of terrifying, but I guess we're gonna keep going. Sorry, that was a very long. That's
great, man. It's amazing to see how one, starting with wakeboards, one thing led to the next, led to the next, led to the next. It's fascinating. So I mean, there's so many things I want to double click on, but maybe if we start back at the beginning and then we can kind of work our way through so when you started Clive, you said there was Mocha Master and kind of nothing else. And then obviously there was a version of that with espresso equipment as well. Why was the market like that? Was it just, consumers sort of didn't know what they were missing, or did you kind of have a view of, how did this product from 1964 how was that the only option for decades?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think, there's been a lot of discussion around the waves in coffee: first wave, second wave, third wave. And the third wave, of course, is specialty coffee. That's kind of like the Stumptown I was speaking to, where people started to think about the origin of their coffee and whatever else. And I think that on the equipment side, I was just lagging. It was lagging what was happening at the cafe level and the roaster level. And certainly one of the last categories to catch up, I think, was the automatic coffee maker. So, back in 2008 when I started Clive, there was the Hario V60, and there was of course, the Chemex has been around for a long time. So there was the Chemex, the Hario, Kalita was another brand that started being sold in the US around that time. There was exploration with, the Yama, the vacuum pots, and then AeroPress comes out with their brewer. So like a lot of the stuff that I think was early and innovative in the home coffee equipment space tended to be more manual, and it, as is natural, the people drawn to this first wave, or not first wave, sorry, but the first expression of the third wave revolution, if you want to call it that, tend to be the types who like to explore, and they like to tinker, and the different variables in coffee brewing that you have to control. Like they're delighted by that sort of challenge, and those tend to be more manual. Or espresso, certainly, La Marzocco at the top end started coming out with espresso machines that had digital control of the temperature. Now they have pressure profiling and all these other things which you can modulate the flavor of the coffee. But in the automatic coffee maker space, full credit to the founder of Mocha Master. I met him a couple of years ago. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he had a vision for really, really excellent cup of filter coffee. And as a Dutch guy, kind of adjacent to the Nordic regions where they have been drinking, I think, well brewed filter coffee for a long time. Certainly longer than Americans have had a typical good cup of filter coffee. And then the Specialty Coffee Association, they came out with a formal testing regimen that brands could submit their products to get the certification saying this brewer controls the time and the temperature and whatever else to produce a good cup of coffee. And so it used to be just Mocha Master, and then it was Bona Vita. If you'd like, I can explain to you why the Ratio 8 doesn't have SCA certification, if that's interesting, but the Ratio 6 does. And then now, fast forward to 2023, there's at least 20 coffee makers that have the certification. So now this badge that's saying your coffee maker brews according to these specs is less special. It's still a good indication of cup quality, but it's not. You can't just hang your hat on that any longer like you could 10 years ago.
Yeah. It's interesting that a piece of that story. So you mentioned you're, living, just outside Portland and coming in. And so you had to experience quality coffee and sort of go through that journey yourself. And that sort of drew you into the category and drew you into wondering, how much better can it be and where are there holes? And it strikes me that I didn't sort of really understand how good coffee could be till I lived in London, and there's so many good coffee shops there. You sort of just drinking good coffee by accident. And then in my case, I got curious, and then I've owned half the products you just mentioned there as part of that journey. But there's sort of this base level. I think there probably still much of the world, still just hasn't been exposed to what coffee can be. And so I'd imagine we're still probably fairly early in that journey at the level of the human species, of up leveling our average level of coffee.
Yeah, it's coffee and wine are frequently compared, and certainly there are similarities with the volatile compounds and the different flavors and the different ways you can explore wine and coffee. But of course, the big difference with coffee, if you're making it at home, is you have to make it yourself. With wine, you just open up a bottle, and unless you're storing it in your sauna, it's going to taste good. Yeah. And with coffee, again, there are all these variables that have to be controlled. So I think that a big opportunity space that is still just it's in early days is finding ways to ensure that the person who ventured out and decided to upgrade from commodity level of coffee, maybe a 5-pound bag of coffee from Costco or a Keurig or whatever, and they spring for a 12-ounce bag of coffee from a local microaster that's $18 or $22 or whatever. If they take that home and they make that coffee, and on Tuesday it stings, it's delightful, it's perfect cup of coffee, and on Thursday it's undrinkable plunk. I mean, they're not going to keep doing that. They're just going to go back. They're going to fall back to what is more predictable, even if it's not as good. If it's predictably okay, they will typically, I think, just do that. So the opportunity space is whether, depending on people's lifestyles, preferences for, aesthetics, budget, whatever, as long as they can find a way of making coffee that is, delightful and reliable and whatever else, that will support the specialty coffee industry and all the efforts that are being made to ensure a fair price that's paid to the producers to make sure we keep getting these yummy coffees delivered to the roasters or whatever. So we see it as this, a virtuous loop. That may not be the right phrase, but a truly sustainable, in all senses of the word, industry. And the more we can empower the home brewer, if you will, to do it, to enjoy that process, not feel like they're wasting their time or their money, the better everyone will be.
Sure. Can you say more on it took me too long in life to realize that buying the least expensive thing in the short run is often the most expensive thing to do in the long run. And so I experienced that with coffee as well. I think I've had a lot of bad coffee makers and they break fairly quickly. And of course they don't make that good a coffee to begin with. And, by contrast, one of the things I love about your products is, amongst other things, they're repairable. And so you sort of can buy a product and yes, you're going to pay for quality, but that's a product that can be with you for a long time. And actually in the long run, you get, right away you get, better tasting coffee, but then in the long run, actually it can be a much wiser financial decision as well. And of course it wastes fewer resources and all the rest of it. So how did you sort of navigate that as you designed product? And then also I think it's just hard I think a lot of people don't get that, right? That's like, pay up now, but trust me, you're saving money. So how have you kind of navigated that as you've put product into the world and designed it and sold it and so on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I credit my dad for giving me an appreciation for this, buy once instead of twice. There's a better phrase. I can't remember what it is, but he would, I remember he built out a woodworking shop and he would buy like all the Bosch equipment instead of the low end stuff that's half the price at Home Depot or whatever. He would buy good quality gear. And I saw this again and again over time, just with his own collection of tools, that this actually worked. This actually worked better. The per use cost is quite a bit lower actually if you're not repeatedly rebuying the same thing. And his own journey with espresso machines, again, he started with the Starbucks barista machine, and then he upgraded to the Rancilio Silvia, and then he got a Crickmill Andrea. Now he has a direct plumb rotary pump Le Spazielli Luca machine with Sapili mahogany panels on it. So, a lot of us have experienced this process of upgrading your products as you start to appreciate the nuance and what quality might mean in that. So I took the experience of being a merchant of coffee equipment through Clive and talking to customers repeatedly about what problems do they have? Like, what are they looking for in coffee? What are they looking for their coffee makers? What pisses them off about a particular device or whatever? And how can we solve for that? So, the price point of the ratio products, we're substantially higher than our competitors. And how I think about that is we're essentially, this is my opinion, of course, but I think we have the most beautiful coffee equipment out there. So that's the aesthetic side of it. That's like the beauty side of it. But we work really, really hard to deliver on the quality side so that what you see and what you're immediately attracted to and what you have this, this initial unboxing experience, that is a durable thing. And that initial like infatuation or love or whatever you want to call it for that product when you first buy it, in an ideal world, that is sustained by the quality of the product. And you might even begin to appreciate that product more and more over time. And it takes a great deal of effort to deliver on a brand promise. If you're offering this pretty coffee maker, but to deliver on it from a quality perspective and to build a quality company that can support this product with all the way from the engineering of the product, all the way to the customer service team that's handling the warranty tickets and talking customers through what it's, dialing in your grinder and you have overflow. Like, how do we deal with that? It's this 360 kind of view of quality, and to support, a 5-year warranty and to have a repairable product where even beyond the 5 years, you can send in your ratio and we'll rebuild it. We will swap out the heating element. We'll replace, something that broke on it. That's how we think about quality. And that's why the retail price, we feel like, reflects the quality. It's not just buying a $90, Gucci t-shirt because it's Gucci. You're buying something that's genuinely quality.
Yeah.
Mark, can I ask? Like, it's quite interesting as you explain that, how you are almost using a different time horizon to define quality than many people in the problem, right? So you're saying I'm defining quality from the first interaction of the unboxing the whole way through to support that might be 5 years later, and repair, which might be 10 years later. Can you just talk us through like how you got to thinking about that, how you think about weaving that into your business, and like what surprised you about doing that? Like it sets you apart from certainly folks that I've come across. So just love for you to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that looking at like Amazon and the ocean of products you can find on Amazon, and how that serves a purpose, right? I'm not bagging on Amazon, right? They serve a purpose. I frequently buy products on Amazon, but that's the fast and cheap and usually undifferentiated, and there's no one to call, there's no relationship there. It's just highly transactional. And so you're buying a widget to solve a particular problem. Like you need to have a compost bin, or you need to have, we have rabbits at our house. So I bought so many things for rabbits. Unbelievable. And as Amazon has grown, and the Amazon type of business has grown and has become so efficient and so, I don't know how to say besides just so big and so efficient. The alternative path for an entrepreneur is to be small and special and differentiated and very, very thoughtful. And so there's this empathetic thinking you have to do to imagine, what problems do they have in brewing coffee, and how could we solve it in a way where they would take a gamble on a small upstart brand of 15 people from Portland, Oregon, and not buy the Jura or whatever that's the more obvious choice. And this has never been like a particularly well-designed plan. I would say it was more of like sort of jumping into it and then first validating a couple of assumptions, like, will people pay for now our high-end ratio, it's $850. Will people pay $400 to $850 for a drip coffee maker? Well, our pre-order campaign back in 2013 demonstrated that yes, they would. And then the second question was like, could we actually build a supply chain to ship that dang thing? And yes, we could. And would they keep buying it after the initial bleeding edge customer who's willing to throw down $400 for a pre-order campaign? Are there more people than that to sustain this business? And can we support a 7-year-old coffee maker that has a problem? So it's just been essentially answering these questions one at a time, and then building the product line and the team and the investor base and everything else that we need to be a viable business.
In terms of the product itself, I mean, I physical products are so difficult, right? In a way, it's where you design and think and build and test, but then at some point it's out in the wild. And I imagine there's just, there are things that have gone well in ways that you could have never expected. And there are things that you just sort of like, well, why would anyone even think to do that to a coffee machine? And now they broke it, And so what have you learned about, as you've refined your product? I imagine there's all sorts of surprising things where it's like, you actually have to think about this or that, that maybe isn't obvious from the outset.
Yeah. The number of coffee makers we've taken into our service center that have coffee beans in the water tank. We've taken apart coffee makers and there are ants inside of it because they live in Florida or something, and keeping it on their patio. I don't know. We see all kinds of stuff. Yeah. I think one of the ongoing challenges we've had is that the ratio essentially solves for the extraction side, the water side of the coffee brewing equation. We don't have anything to offer on the grinding side. So we are using other grinders paired up with our brewers, and that works okay. We essentially have two grinders that we recommend: the Fellow Ode and the Brazza Encore are our sort of, those are not the only options on the market, certainly, but those are sort of the two options that we default to. We find that people are frustrated by the grinding process. They are frustrated by the noise and chaff and the grind setting question of like, well, I changed the coffee and all of a sudden the coffee tastes bad. Like, why? And why is, that's an ongoing challenge. We have not solved that. We try to, whether it's our team talking to someone, via chat or phone or email, or it's just our website copy, we try to actually filter out people that wouldn't be a good fit for ratio. It's not in our best interest or their best interest to get into a ratio if it's not a good fit for them. So the ratio is not for everyone. It is certainly not the cheapest. There are a lot of features that are normally in coffee makers that we pulled out to try to coax a better experience and a better tasting cup of coffee. And we also have pulled out some things that we believe lead to a longer lasting product. So we could have done a robotic arm that is exactly mimicking what a water kettle does when it's making a pour over. That would have been a moving part that probably would fail over time, that the scale buildup would interrupt that process or whatever. So we've made some decisions we have a ratio Venn diagram, so to speak, that has been guiding our process since the very beginning. And it's not the most elegant thing in the world, but it works fine for us. So we essentially have 3 interlocking circles that are equally balanced. We try to keep them in equal tension. And it's the beauty of something, the form, the function. That's sort of like self-evident. You just look at it, you're like, oh, I like the shape of that. Then there's the quality, and that's everything we've been speaking to. And the fact that we use hardware in the ratio line that is reusable for a reason. It costs more, but it enables us to service this thing for the long term. We don't use one use clips and little cheap, plastic screws and stuff like that. The third circle is simplicity. So we are not the option if you're looking for dialing in a really, really complicated recipe. I will say in the future we'll have some more options that introduce professional tools, if you will. But for now, our home models, there's one button. You push the button, and the ratio 8 or 6 will deliver in a very consistent manner, optimized water temperature and time to deliver coffee. So the ultimate goal of those 3 circles, like all those things are working in equal tension, hopefully, to deliver a great cup of coffee. That's why you buy a ratio or any coffee maker, is to have a great cup of coffee. And that's how we think about it. So certainly not disrespecting the options on the market that have all the different recipes that you can modulate. We're not speaking negatively of the pod machines or the super automatics or whatever. We're just saying we think filter coffee is a beautiful cup of coffee, and the way the machine makes coffee in concert with you can be a really lovely, ritual, a daily ritual.
Just on the Venn diagram, like ultimately the thing that's always surprised me about the customer experience as a coffee user is you have that kind of some machines or certainly some providers in a retail setting, they over optimize for aesthetics. So they have a beautiful retail setting, they have a beautiful machine, the commercial machine they probably spent 20 grand on, but then they have something missing. It's just a dull experience. And then at home, I've also seen the other end of the spectrum where they've over optimized for function and you don't have aesthetic, and then you don't want it on your island in your kitchen or something. So can you just talk about like how you think about the tension point between those things, form and function, and the aesthetic and function as you're designing it, and just like what surprised you about that over the years as you've tinkered with it?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that the ratio product line has been probably more successful than it would have been otherwise if I hadn't first been a merchant at Clive. So I answered all the calls at Clive in the early days. And so I talked to everything from the most sophisticated coffee enthusiast that has the most detailed questions and they have a TDS meter in their home to the person who is just asking, can I put Folgers in the ratio? And the answer to that is yes, you can. But a gentle coaxing of like why you might consider changing out the coffee, and you'd be delighted how different it can taste and whatever else. But those interlocking values, of beauty and quality and simplicity, I really just started with myself. Like, what am I looking for in a coffee maker? And I made a bet that there would be enough people out there that would have a similar perspective. And so everything from the use of materials, the ratio 8 has die-cast aluminum parts, metal parts. They're heavy. It's overkill. In fact, multiple engineers have told us this thing is overkill. You could put 4 of them you could probably park a pickup truck on top of 4 of them, most likely. It's overkill. It's totally overkill. And then we have real wood. But like one of our brand values is if you see something that looks like a material, it is it. It is real wood. It is not veneer or plastic printed metal or wood. If it looks like chrome, it is chrome. It is not plastic that's been plated to look like chrome. And the use of the precision, the very precise metal parts on the Ratio 8, and then the wood trim, which has its own, it's a hand sanded wood trim part. It's not perfect. It doesn't mate perfectly with the metal in the same way that it would if it was a metal or plastic part. The hand blown glass water tank, there are natural imperfections because we took a molten glass material and we, with tools and a lot of expertise, formed a glass water tank. Why would you make a glass water tank? It's ridiculous. The process required to make this thing is I've seen it in person. It's bonkers. It's a bonkers level of complexity to make this thing. But people have demonstrated by the fact that, in fact, today our most backordered product is a glass water tank Ratio 8. The $850 model is our most backordered product. If you place an order today, May 17th, our estimate is we'll ship it to you at the end of August. I hate this reality. This is like the most frustrating aspect of my life right now, but it is what it is. So anyway, we have all these things that we've done that are not the most efficient way to do it. It's certainly not the cheapest way to do it, but I built it off of my love of a corkscrew. Don't judge me, but a very frequently used item in my kitchen is a corkscrew. It's the classic waiter's corkscrew. It's made of metal, and it has a walnut, two pieces of walnut trim that made up perfectly against that metal. I've had that corkscrew since I got married, 2005. And that little simple tool, that we have a picture of that tool on our mood board from the original Ratio 8. So I am drawn to this juxtaposition of natural materials, the imperfections of wood and glass with the perfection of a cast metal part. There wasn't some marketing research study that was produced that said, hey, do you know what? People will probably pay a lot of money for a metal, wood, and glass coffee maker. I just used my intuition that was formed by being a merchant of coffee equipment over the years at Clive, and then my own just wish list, to form the Ratio 8. And then from there, we just kept iterating from it. So again, I'm not the best planner in the world. I'm not an inventor. I'm not a master planner or anything like that. I just have this, I love products. I love beautiful things. My grandma had a house in California filled with Eames loungers and Warren Plattner dining sets and Calder prints. And I learned to love beautiful objects from her. And then my dad, again, taught me about quality objects. So if you marry the quality and the beauty side, that's sort of what Ratio has become. So again, it's not for everybody, but I'm happy to say we have enough customers that have joined the Ratio project that we've proven that there is something there.
What would be really interesting is just to understand who you look up to on the design side. And I know we mentioned Cuccinelli before, but I think it would be interesting just to understand who you kind of studied and to learn some of this stuff and learn some of these principles over time. If you have a few minutes just to kind of walk through that for everyone.
Oh yeah, certainly. Mid-century design has been a part of my life since I was a kid. Again, my grandma she still does. She's still with us. She's 92 and she still has her Eames lounger. Her second Eames lounger is in my garage waiting to be refurbished at some point when I have the budget for it. So mid-century design, Dieter Rams, thoughtful use of materials has been influential for me. This is cliche, of course, but Apple, I remember my first Apple laptop and my first iPhone, just the thoughtfulness of that. I think it's Charles Eames has a quote, something to the effect of, the details are not the details are the design. And so that's been an influential quote for me. I love traditional craftsmanship and old school businesses that have been doing the same thing for a really long time, all the way from, I love Weber. I love the Weber grill. I have a Weber grill on my patio. It is not nearly as cool as some of the expensive, elaborate smokers and barbecues. I have a friend who has a pizza oven that was like $3,000, Gosney, I think it is. Another friend has a green egg. Those are way better quality devices than the Weber. But there's something about this formed metal basic barbecue that I just love. It's quality enough, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
A friend of mine, Stephen Ken, is a furniture designer and fabricator out of Los Angeles. He does wonderful work. I'm inspired by his use of mixed materials, unusual materials. Like I think he got started with reclaimed military fabrics or something for his couch line. I think quality of an experience is also something to think about. And, like Canlis Restaurant in Seattle, I love that place. I love the thinking that they put into not just the taste of the food, but the entire experience, from the person greeting you at the valet parking, all the way to the service, to the take home bag or whatever it is. I really admire products that can age well, that get better over time. Danner boots. I have a pair of Danner hiking boots that have aged super well. Yeah. Certainly in the espresso machine category, there are lots of options there too. But I don't want to make it into something that's, precious and like overstate it. Like sometimes it's fine to have a really cheap, it's just fine product. My pitch is not everyone should go out and buy the most expensive, highest quality device you can find. That is not the idea.
Yeah.
But I certainly think, that term trading up, even if you are not in the high income bracket, if there's something that like just strikes your fancy that you love, find an object that is beautiful and long lasting and it's going to enhance your enjoyment of that thing.
Yeah. I love that. We've gone down this rabbit hole before of, what are things you've encountered that have gotten better over time or that you enjoy more the longer you have it. And there's just precious little in that category. We've all got a few, but it's just, there's so little there. And of course, a necessary but not sufficient condition of that is something that will actually last a long time. And then,
right.
And then of course, beauty becomes important. Otherwise it kind of goes stale and then you keep going. But that's really interesting that I've seen this and heard this and experienced this with writers, that there's this idea that the only person you can really write well for is yourself, because you only understand, it's hard for me to anticipate what you want out of me as a writer. I can guess, but I will never know it as well as you, but I do know what I think a good piece of writing is. And I'm sort of hearing that in your product design as well. The unique set of experiences that have made you built a coffee maker for yourself. And surprise, surprise, there are a lot of other folks that share some of those values and want some of that experience. And so you put it into the world.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm going to nudge us towards a close here in a minute, but Will, Paul, please keep going with questions as you have them.
I'd love to invite you, Mark, to talk a little about how you go about and have gone about finding other people who care about getting on this mission to build things that last.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think a big part of this is just full credit to the number of advisors I've had over the years, and most of them I still have. My dad is first and foremost. My dad made some introductions to his network to get some of the really early questions answered on ratio, like could you even manufacture a coffee maker in the US, and what would it possibly cost, and what does tooling cost, and how do you hire a mechanical engineer? And I have Chris Taylor as an old friend, an early investor in Clive and now Ratio, and he would sit with me over. We would get beers, and he would look at some really early financial forecast that I had for the Ratio, and I've made billions of dollars in spreadsheets. It's pretty amazing over the years. And but he would look at this forecast, and he would be like, okay, so take your forecast and cut it in half and see what happens, and then take it and cut it in half again. Essentially, go to 25%. And what happens with your model if that's the case? So that compelled me to kind of poke at this and really think through what this might look like. And then he wrote a check to kickstart the Ratio 8. And so there was an early group of people that were really pivotal and really influential for me to have the confidence to start first Clive and then later to start Ratio. And then my dad helped me to recruit one of our former employees at the wakeboarding business, who had gone off to do something entirely different. And we recruited him to join the team and be our COO, our director of development. And he was the one that actually figured out how to deliver. His name's Brad Wallhead. He was the one who figured out how to actually ship this friggin' thing that I had spent all this time, celebrating this wonderful concept, the theory of a coffee maker. And he was the one that actually worked for 18 months to ship it. So that was an essential piece of it, I think, was essentially pulling in a co-founder. And then it was as the realities of the costs of building a physical product of this complexity and quality became clear, then I had to find new investors and more investors. And so I quickly outpaced the capacity of my close network to write checks, and had to learn what it's like to pitch much wealthier people and get them to write a check. And we did a crowdfunding round and everything else. So it's been a process, I guess, of building the team, the company, the support network that we need for the company to be viable. And it is admittedly way harder than I ever expected. I mean, I am wildly idealistic, but I've had enough people join me, whether it's just as an advisor level or an investor level or whatever it is, that have really helped to refine and stress test and simplify. And some of my crazier ideas, if I had my druthers, we would be dropping right now a British Racing Green ratio 8 with brass trim pieces and some really obscure wood species trim on it, whatever. We'd be doing artist collaborations, and we'd have coffee receptions on a roof somewhere brewing on ratios, but we're not there yet. So, and the fact that we're not there yet is a testament to the people on the team that are like the brakes to my natural over ambition or whatever it is. So it's been a process, and we're still learning, but it literally takes all kinds. And if it was just me, we would have gone out of business, 13 years ago.
You sort of hinted at maybe in that, and then earlier in our conversation on some of the difficult trade-offs you sometimes need to make between product quality and business quality. And I'm sure there's there's a lot of other trade-offs as well, but can you tell us maybe a little bit about what you've learned on, I guess if we start from the notion of, if you built the brewer that did and had and looked and everything you wanted, this would be $1 million brewer and it would be amazing.
Yeah.
You could probably only sell, 20 of those. And then the flip side, of course, is Mr. Coffee, which is, I think doesn't deliver, isn't outstanding on any category. And so you've kind of had to sit between those poles and then also figure out how to make this obviously an economically viable thing too. So what have you learned about kind of making those trade-offs that's, keeps you in that Venn diagram of beauty, quality, simplicity, but is sustainable from a business perspective, but also is true to your vision and wanting to have a beautiful brewer that makes wonderful coffee?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of my informal mentors over the years has been Kyle Anderson, the co-founder of Baratza Grinders, and he got me to appreciate lean manufacturing very early on. So I started to, there was the Lean Startup book by Eric Ries, I think it is. So I read that book about sort of the software side of building a business in a lean way. Kyle helped me understand the actual lean manufacturing process. And there's this Japanese word, muda, it's like waste. And one aspect of waste is if you have quality or complexity or cost built into your product that your customer actually doesn't care about and they're not willing to pay for, that's muda. You should actually take it out. And the original ratio 8, we came up with this really clever way. It is clever, but we wanted to detect how much water was in the water tank. And the way most people do that is with a scale. The problem with the scale is it's a sensitive instrument, and they tend to be one of the first things to go out in a product. And I can't tell you, I would not want to take a call from someone who couldn't make coffee that morning because the scale went out on their coffee maker. So we came up with a way of detecting the water in the tank using air pressure. So as you add water to the tank, it pressurizes this thin tube of air that's connected to a pressure sensor on the PCB board. And it would take a calculation or a measurement of the difference between atmospheric pressure and then the pressure of the water in the tank. And from there, we had a brewing table, more or less, and we would say with this if-then calculation of basically if there's this amount of water in the tank, do this amount of bloom time, wait this long, and then commence the rest of the brewing phase. So in theory, elegant design, clever solution, and that was the way we did it for a long time. And then we came out with the ratio 6 in 2019. And as we were developing the ratio 6, we sort of surveyed our customers yet again, with more intentionality. And what we discovered, most people didn't know that the ratio 8 was doing that. It was a feature that was there that people didn't really care about. And we also, essentially, in dialing in the ratio 6, we needed to pull back the cost. We didn't have the budget on the component side to include this design. We also didn't have the wood trim pieces where we hid the airline that would feed into the PCB. So we had to solve for that. And so we spent a lot of time on the brewing side and testing and talking to our customers and whatever else. And we realized, you know what? Most people are brewing at least at the low side, a half batch, 20 ounces of coffee, but most people are brewing full batch, maybe 3/4 to a full batch. So the sensitivity we had built into this device was essentially unnecessary. And we also realized that there was a warranty incidence rate that was higher than it should have been related to this sensitive instrument. It was better than a scale, but it was still too finicky. And so we pulled that out of the ratio 8. It doesn't do that any longer. It still has essentially around a 30-second bloom time and then a rest and then a brew time. But we realized that we were adding sensitivity and complexity and cost in a way that our customers didn't actually care about. And that was causing supply chain friction and customer service friction and all these other things. So the trade-off is, in our opinion, better to have a more rugged and durable device and to pull out this feature that they really wasn't actually improving their cup quality. Another example is when we came out with a double wall insulated carafe for the ratio 8. I put on the product requirements document that I would love for it to be the same size, essentially the same profile as our hand-blown glass carafe that we still produce to this day. And so that requirement that I put on there, in hindsight, was stupid. It was a totally unnecessary requirement. Thermal carafe should have been 10% bigger because the downline implications of that requirement, like we had to do a special type of laser welding process on the inside of this double wall doer. And then the volume issues related to how much coffee you can fill. Anyway, it caused all these issues. And my COO, Brad, spent months trying to solve for this stupid requirement that we shouldn't have had. And so that isn't exactly a quality thing per se, but it's an example where my dream scenario for this product was causing stress for my COO and stress for the supply chain and complexity that was not necessary. So I had to pull back on that. And so as we're working on our next brewer called the Ratio 4, and so I think I am a better product visionary with the experience behind me of the Ratio 8 and the Ratio 6, and hopefully we deliver something that is a ratio product that's as delightful and just like the Ratio 8 and the Ratio 6, but there's more of a design for manufacturer thinking that goes into that product, which ultimately leads to a better quality supply chain, a better quality assembly process, a better quality customer service experience, a better company for our investors. So it's this full, complete picture of quality, not just an obsession around like the physical product itself.
Right. Yeah. That idea of Muda that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder where else in my life and in the things I do and in the things I have, where have I paid for things I didn't value? It's a fascinating lens. And that kind of naturally leads us. So I'm going to nudge us to some closing questions. But just before I do that, can you say anything about what's coming down the pipe, whether that be for Clive or Ratio or other things? I mean, you're clearly so deep in product. I mean, I'm curious what else might the world expect out of you and your operations in the coming years?
Oh boy, it's a great question.
Like the Racing Green Ratio 8.
Yeah, so we're after continuous improvement. So the Ratio 8 is not going to see substantial changes. Hopefully some special limited drops of different colors and wood combinations. The Ratio 6, we're undergoing a thermal carafe lid revision. I've never been thrilled with that design from the very beginning, and we just didn't have the capital to invest in a substantially better design. We now have that capital, and so we kicked that off, and I'm very excited about releasing that probably end of year, hopefully. And then the Ratio 4, thrilled with this product. I've been working on it since 2018, really. And so people ask, why Ratio 8, 6, and 4? The Ratio 8 was called Ratio 8 because it makes 8 cups of coffee. If you call a cup 5 ounces, which who knows what a cup is, but let's just say it's 5 ounces. Then we came up with the Ratio 6 and it actually brews 8 cups of coffee. So then we're like, forget about this being related to number of cups. It's just the size of the device. So the 4 is, as you might expect, quite a bit more compact than the 6 and the 8. It's specifically designed for homes that don't brew a lot of coffee. If you only need 20 ounces of coffee, or you want to brew, 6 or 8 ounces of coffee. It's 11 inches tall. It's got a really, really beautiful form, and you can see a sneak peek of it on our website, ratiocoffee.com/4, FOUR. That is headed for probably a Kickstarter campaign some point this year, and shipment next year. And then we are also working on a light commercial version of the 4 that has full, complete recipe control, has a direct plumb option along with the water tank, NSF certified, so you can put in a restaurant, a bar, a hotel, kind of a higher capacity commercial format. That's the Ratio line. We've been poking around espresso as well. So we don't have anything formally in production in that side, but as you know from Luca and Clive, I love espresso dearly. And so if we did anything in the espresso category, Ratio has simplicity as one of our values. So we wouldn't just ship another E61 espresso machine. There would not be like sort of that complexity, the complexifying factors that some espresso enthusiasts love. we would have to in some way offer a very, very simple and yet high quality experience. So easier said than done, but that's how Ratio would do it if we did that. Personally, I'm moving I'm trying to move my life forward in a way that eventually I have kind of a suite of consumer products, all with a similar kind of approach. It's certainly high quality and beautiful and whatever else, but I just really love consumer products. The payoff for me is seeing someone just be totally, totally delighted by a product. And going back to the early days at Clive, watching someone have their first taste of coffee without cream and sugar, they're like, oh, that aha moment of like what coffee can be. I love that experience. That to me is like such a rewarding thing to see. We're in the industrial part of Portland, so you may hear the train in the background. And my wife and I have started a sauna and cold plunge routine. I'm looking at the sauna space. I have a couple projects in that area. Who knows what the future holds, but on the Ratio side,
I imagine we'll be talking again, because it sounds like you're not going to quit anytime soon. So
yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So can you let us know 2 things? So one, how can listeners connect with you? And that could be you personally, and then also obviously the products you offer. And then related to that, if there's any kind of help you're looking for, and that could be defined as you want to define it. It's as simple as, connect with our products to make beautiful coffee. It could be, looking for investors. It could be, whatever's relevant. If somebody said, hey, I'd like to be in Mark's world, what kind of help are you looking for?
Oh, wow. I appreciate that question. So Clive Coffee is still quite a bit bigger than when I was running it. So I'm still a part owner in Clive. I don't manage it at all. It's clivecoffee.com if you're looking for anything in the home espresso category. Ratiocoffee.com is the Ratio website. And if you go to the About Us page, my direct email is on that page. So from the very beginning, I've made it a commitment that I don't hide behind customer service firewalls or whatever. So my email is right on that page. We have a wonderful suite of, that's not the right word, but we have a wonderful group of investors right now. We are always looking for more, and we're looking for strategic investors that are able to contribute more, perhaps more than just a check. So investors that have experience with, manufacturing, global sales, sourcing, consumer products, that sort of thing would be really wonderful. We do have an open round right now. We are getting into more of a hospitality segment as well. So anyone who's in the restaurant world, the hotel, high-end Airbnb, whatever, if you are serving coffee to people in a hospitality context that isn't necessarily a high volume batch brewer, I'd love to connect with you. And our new product, the Ratio 4, has some really, really excellent applications for that. Yeah, I just love connecting with people. I love connecting with other entrepreneurs, other thinkers. Send me an email. I love connecting with people.
Fantastic. Thank you. So my our closing question is always the same one, which is, what is the most memorable expression of quality? That could be an item, that could be an experience. I'm reminded of that corkscrew that was at your wedding. But what's the most memorable expression of quality that you've encountered?
Okay. So besides wine, I have to reveal another one of my vices is I really like cigars and tobacco pipes, and so I usually buy a tobacco pipe when I'm in a new city. So I have one from Rome, I have one from Dublin, I have one from London, I have one from Paris, and one of my most memorable experiences and pipes in combination. There's an old pipe shop that's it's within the shade normally of the Duomo in Florence, and the proprietor has this tiny little shop, and he is so committed to an exceptional customer service experience that the door is locked, not because of fear of theft or anything like that, because he wants to serve one customer at a time.
Wow!
And he will open every box. He has this wonderful sense of hospitality that is so beyond the typical retail experience. And so if you're in Florence and you're by the Duomo and you like pipe tobaccos, even if you don't, maybe you can admire the craftsmanship that goes into it. So anyway, when I was there, I bought this pipe that it has a wood bowl for the tobacco, and then it has this really lovely acetate, kind of an orange acetate stem. And so it's the, again, juxtaposition of kind of a mid-century material with an old world material of the wood. That to me, like, I don't know, it was, for a pipe, it was more than I normally spend. I think it was 200 euros, but I bought that pipe 10 years ago, still use it on the regular. And that retail experience made it even more special.
That is an awesome, I've never heard that kind of retailer story. That's incredible. Yeah. Well, Mark, this has been wonderful. Thank you for taking the time with us.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Great to meet you.
Great. Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. And for more resources, please visit our website, theartofquality.co. If you think of anyone that could be a good fit for this format, please reach out via the website.